Welcome to the Love Disciple podcast. Today's intro is a little bit long, so I'm going to read a little bit of it just to help keep me on track. So, this person is none other than Olivia Hertzog. When I first heard of Olivia, it was actually through Sarah Blakely, the billionaire founder of Spanx. I was in the middle of a spiritual awakening and became really, really interested in Sarah Blakely, the way that she does business, and how successful she's become. And I found out about her through Masterclass. I followed her on Instagram, and she would post stories about this girl who had moved into her driveway in her RV and was feeding her husband raw vegan food. Now, at the time, I had heard of raw vegan food before, but I had never seen somebody be a raw vegan chef. And the dishes that Olivia was putting out were really interesting. Something about Olivia drew me in right away. I loved her sense of adventure. I loved her personal integrity and the way that she lives out her values. And I connected with her right away. And I knew that she was going to be coming to Austin in the fall. So I invited her. I was like, hey, do you want to hang out? And we did, and we became friends. Now, Olivia's work, it may seem like colorful food photography. It may seem like diet advice. But what she really offers is a holistic, spiritual approach to eating and to consumption. So I'm pleased to invite you to meet Olivia, health coach, raw vegan chef, and now a new mother.
Dynamite, I'm blowing up my mind. I wanna be free, I wanna be cool, I wanna be bad. Okay, welcome, Olivia. Okay, Olivia, you got married. Are you now Olivia Gomez? You're still Olivia Hertzog, right?
Yeah, I never changed my last name, so I'm still Olivia Hertzog.
Okay, that took me a minute. I was like, oh my gosh. Well, I'm really pleased to be here interviewing with Olivia. Olivia is out. She's not in Texas, where most of our interviewees have been. So we're doing a Zoom interview, and it's really good to see you. I want to introduce Olivia a little bit by sharing how I found her. So when I first found her, I was really interested in Sarah Blakely. She's one of the first, I think she is the first female self-made billionaire. She was the founder and CEO of Spanx. And I saw her masterclass, followed her on Instagram, followed her husband, Jesse Itzler, and then saw that Jesse Itzler had hired this person, Olivia, to be in his driveway. Was that it?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
be and to be a raw vegan chef. And so I just something about Olivia just really, I was like, wow, I really love this person. And I didn't even necessarily, I think I did follow you, but then I saw that you were coming to Austin, and I just had the audacity to ask you out on like a friend date, a friend meetup, and then we did, and it has been awesome getting to follow you and stay in touch ever since. So Olivia she was a raw vegan chef. She is somebody who is raw vegan. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and how you got into raw veganism and what it is and all of the juicy goodness.
Totally. Yeah. So I think we're pretty familiar with veganism, right? This thing, right? The avoidance of eating or using animal products, and raw veganism is sort of the next step, maybe a little bit more extreme. So raw veganism is not cooking your food, which I'll be straightforward from the beginning. I'm not a fully raw vegan. I do eat some cooked foods, but I did have a several year stint of eating only raw food, and I still host raw vegan retreats. I still work as a raw vegan private chef on occasion. I still do a lot of health coaching to help people transition to a raw vegan diet. But yeah, raw veganism is just eating raw food. So lots of fruit, lots of salad. We dehydrate lots of different things, keep the temperature really low so that we're not cooking things. And it's a really nutritious way to eat. It's a really pleasurable way to eat. And so it's sort of this dual thing that I do because it tastes really good and it makes me feel really good. It's really good for my body. And I got into it about 8 or 9 years ago when I met someone at a cafe I was working at who was vegan. And I never heard of veganism before at that point. That was completely foreign to me. And I'd struggled with an unhealthy relationship with food for years and years. And when she told me that she was vegan and she explained what that was, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty resonant. Like, I think that sounds pretty good. That makes a lot of sense. I'll try that out. So I tried that out for a couple months, just eating all the vegan junk food, Oreos and meats and all those things. And I didn't really notice any difference. It didn't make me feel any better. And then one day I was in her room and I saw this book. It's called the 80-10-10 book. It's a raw vegan book. 80-10-10 stands for the macronutrient breakdown. So 80% carbs, 10% fats, 10% protein. And I asked if I could borrow it. So I took it home and I read it within just a couple days. And I thought, no, this is really it. Like, this really makes a lot of sense that we should be eating real foods, not Oreos, like actual real foods, fruits and salads and yeah, all those things. And so I pretty much just dove right in. I just started going to the store and buying tons of bananas and mangoes and just started figuring out how to eat raw food. And the story is much longer. I ended up moving to a raw vegan community in Hawaii, where I lived with other people who were eating this way and living this sort of lifestyle of connection to nature and connection to self through this diet. And yeah, it's just totally transformed my whole life. So
Right.
that's
That was awesome. I'm glad you touched on Hawaii, because I think one of the ways that I describe you to people, I love like the kind of shock value of telling people about your banana stint. I don't want to spoil it, so can you just tell us like the headline of that?
yeah. So before I moved to Hawaii, I ended up getting a parasite from studying abroad in Israel, drinking water I was told not to drink. I did it anyway, and I got a parasite. And it wreaked havoc on my body, really intense. Again, that's a whole nother story. But I ended up moving to Hawaii into this raw vegan community and was bound and determined that I was going to purge this parasite without any antiparasitics, without any pharmaceuticals, without anything other than my own body doing what my body's designed to do, which is heal always. And so part of what I felt was a healing protocol was to eat only bananas. So for 60 days, I ate nothing but bananas in an attempt to purge my parasite. And said attempt worked. I did purge my parasite. And yeah, I lived off of just bananas. And again, I learned so much more about myself and about my body's healing powers. And yeah, the body's amazing.
Yeah, that's a huge theme in all of your work. I remember that we've been talking about this for months, if not years. I mean, you trust your body's ability to heal, period. And so can you talk a little bit more about how that revelation has guided you so far?
Yeah, it's been a constant evolution for me over years now. I mean, that Hawaii thing was back in 7 years ago. And it's just been one process after another with myself and then with working with other people of becoming more deeply aware and committed to the idea that the body is unbelievably miraculous and it is designed always in all situations towards health. It is always oriented towards health and healing. The ideas that we have circulating in our world that the body is feeble or broken, that these autoimmune diseases where the body attacks itself. I mean, I call bull crap on all of it. I don't think it's true. I think that the body is in every situation doing its best for us, for our survival and even for our thriving. And that can be really hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around, again, because of the messaging that we've received, this way that we've come to think of our bodies. And I was in the same place years ago as well. But the more I experience, the more I'm just so committed to this idea that the body is perfect in its design. And I had a baby. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe I should just stop there for now.
No, you're doing good. I definitely want to talk about the feats that you've accomplished. First, there was something that you said that really sparked my interest. It was about, gosh, I just lost it because I was thinking about Babysitter. He kind of steals the show, doesn't he?
A little bit.
Gosh, so it was about health being more than a specific diet. So you're not going around, I mean, you do create raw vegan recipes. I see them, we see them, we'll highlight them during the commercial break. But it's more than just like proselytizing raw veganism, right? I've seen that. I've seen you say that a couple times.
Yeah, my big thing is my belief is that health is connection to self. Health is who we are. I say this all the time. And disease is a disconnection from self. So it is so much more than diet. And why a raw vegan diet works for me is because it feels true for me. And the reality is that people have healed and continue to heal everything imaginable: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all the things on a variety of different diets, right? And it's what we can get our faith behind. It's what we believe in. It's the power of our mind. It's what feels true for us. So what feels deeply true for me, like I said, is to eat a plant-based diet with lots and lots of raw foods. And so you're right, I don't push that as being the ultimate thing that I think everyone should do. I do think everyone should eat more plants. I think everyone should eat more real foods, right? Less Oreos, more apples. That feels very just natural. But again, who are we, right? Who are we as humans? Human beings. There aren't Oreos hanging on trees outside in nature, but there are apples. And so it's who we are to eat real food. And it's a disconnection from our truest self to eat things that are man-made and processed and not ultimately designed for the human body. But ultimately, it's true that health is so much more than just the foods that we eat. It's really about an awareness of ourselves, who we are, and eating and living and being in such a way that feels authentically Olivia or authentically Saint.
100%. Before we wrap, I want to circle back to that and just talk about some of the techniques that you offer to help people connect with themselves. Like if I wanted to try a quote unquote diet, or not even a diet, if I wanted to try eating differently, like how I might connect to that. But before I get into that, I want to hear a little bit about, some of the feats that your lifestyle has enabled, because I hear it all the time whenever I tell people about your banana story. They're like, oh, she must be so weak. And I see the comments on your Instagram about people having a lot to say about your diet and how you're not getting enough protein and blah, blah, blah. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've done on this diet and how it powers you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm 32 now. I just had a baby 2 weeks ago today. I've been repeatedly, thank you, told that my postpartum recovery is inspiring and amazing. And in a way, I'm not trying to break any records here. I feel really good, right? I just feel really good. But yeah, I feel absolutely in the best shape of my life. But before I say that, even I often say that really my commitment to the way that I eat and the way that I live has more to do with my mental health, how that has been so changed and so shaped by my diet. And I always feel to emphasize that point because I know it's a all too common experience for many people to deal with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, all these different things. And I deeply believe that the way that we're eating is largely impacting that. And so I'm very committed to my diet because of how it's expanded my world. It's just opened up so many opportunities. I feel so much more optimistic and excited to be alive than I did years ago eating McDonald's. So that's really, really important, I think, for people to hear. But from a physical standpoint, yeah, I mean, I've done some of the hardest hikes on the East Coast. I haven't been out west a ton. My husband is a big runner. My husband eats really similarly to me, and he's getting into ultra marathons. He runs 40 to 50 miles a week right now. Yeah, I mean, I've traveled all around. I just had a baby. I went to 45 weeks in my pregnancy, which for some is crazy and unbelievable. And I ate a mostly raw vegan diet that whole way through. And here I am 2 weeks postpartum, continuing to eat the same way and feeling totally awesome. Almost fully like myself. My baby weight is pretty much gone. And again, I'm not like trying to prove anything necessarily. I'm just being connected to myself, doing what feels good. And I'm observing that the body just is miraculous always when we give it the right tools and when we don't act in opposition to its natural processes, right? We don't interrupt it through man-made means, I guess.
Very fair. I think the thing that you said that really resonated the most was your statement about you feel more alive than you felt when you were eating McDonald's, and I just didn't want to gloss over that. So many times when people speak, I'm like, the best nugget is hidden in there. I'm like, I want to highlight that to the surface. I want to come back and also talk a little bit more about your pregnancy, if you're open to it. I know you've posted videos. I do want to take a quick break here to kind of highlight those and highlight your work if that works for you.
Sure.
Sweet. We'll take a break. We are on a commercial break and diving deeper into Olivia's services. Working with Olivia is easy. Just visit her website and select your favorite courses, stay with her during one of her community retreats, or join her online community and get instant access to hundreds of recipes for less than $30. You can also visit her store and purchase a one-off meal plan just to see if her recipes are for you. I'm going to make sure to link her store in the show notes for this particular podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube or another site that does video podcasting, you should be able to see her website in the description as well as on screen. My personal favorite is the raw dressings and sauces package. If you've ever tried one of her sauce recipes, you know what I mean. Olivia's recipes are designed to be simple, fast, and delicious, with simple ingredients that you don't have to special order online. Fast recipes that use a blender or whatever tools you have at home, and simple instructions above all. It's a true win-win. Have fun exploring. All right, so we're jumping back in talking about Olivia, who just had a 45-week pregnancy. And so I've watched your birth video. It was very sweet. Wes made it for you, right?
Yeah.
It was excellent. Tell me, I mean, watching you is like watching some of my deepest fears play out in terms of watching your social media presence, girl, because people just say the wildest things to you. And so you've had a lot of other people's opinions coming at you this whole pregnancy. So would you just tell me in your words, like, what the pregnancy process was like for you and how you navigated it?
Yeah. So I did have a 45-week pregnancy and a 40+ hour labor 2 weeks ago. Yeah, the process, so I decided to do an unassisted pregnancy and birth. I felt very much from the beginning that the extension of what I believed, that health is who I am and my body's always working for me. It's designed for natural biological processes to occur naturally, like pregnancy and birth. It felt like that belief that I have was just going to play out naturally in how I experienced pregnancy and birth. And definitely experienced a lot of hate online, a lot of opinions, a lot of judgments. I think moms can be the worst, man. Like, I mean, unbelievable the level of judgment and opinions. It's crazy. But it's been really interesting and also pretty sad. And also it's sort of given me this deeper resolve to the work that I do, to see how much people distrust their own bodies, how much fear and confusion we have around our own bodies. So much so that a woman deciding to have a natural pregnancy without all of the tests and interventions and, appointments and all such things is seen as reckless and dangerous and irresponsible, when to me, it's just the most natural thing to do. I'm deeply in trust of my body. I expect health. And I think this is a really important point, because when we start from the position of expecting a poor outcome, expecting something to go wrong, right? What happens, right? Like our minds, our expectations, our beliefs are ever creating our reality, both in our health, in our relationships, in our careers, in all areas of our lives. And so for me, I start from the very firmest position that my body is perfectly designed to move through and navigate all experiences that come to me, right? That crazy rash, that headache, that, digestive issue, a baby, right? Like all of the things the body is designed to work through. And I don't see those things as inherently risky or dangerous. I see it as natural. And so, yeah, it's been such an incredibly empowering experience to have my pregnancy and my birth with my baby Cedar, just all in my own power, not needing another person to interfere or to rescue me or to accomplish something for me. It was possible all for me on my own. And that's something that I feel really strongly to communicate to my clients and my community, that our bodies are capable, and they're capable on our own, and we can know our bodies and heal and grow life and birth life all within our own power without the need for anyone else. It's okay to want someone else. It's okay to want support. It's okay to do whatever you want to do. You don't need it, right? Like you have everything you need for all of your needs within yourself.
Would you say that I guess my impression is that having, like, if I were, so right now with my diet, I'm just kind of like, man, I'm lucky if I remember to eat, I'm not necessarily choosing or selecting foods that I connect with. So then if I were to try to test out this brand new belief that my body is capable and healthy and things like that, like if I got pregnant like you did and tried to connect to it, I think I think that I would have like a little bit of a harder time than you. It's my understanding that the 7 years that you've spent practicing, honing, living into this belief has really prepared you for this big, like, sort of magnum opus moment where you're able to go 45 weeks and do this. But like, if someone was wanting to start on that journey or start to build that belief, what would you tell them, or like how could they start to build that for themselves?
It's a really good question. Yeah. So where I tell my clients to start is in the most basic of things, right? So you're going to get up and you're going to have breakfast, and you're going to choose something that does feel really good for you, right? You're not going to choose what I tell you to eat. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. You're not going to choose what so-and-so influencer tells you to eat, or what this book or this podcast tells you to eat. You're going to go into the kitchen, or you're going to go to the grocery store. You're going to go wherever, and you're going to choose the food that genuinely feels most exciting and nourishing for you. And you're going to do it, right? You're going to eat that, and you're going to repeat that for many, many, many times. And then, in a seemingly other dumb way, on a Friday night, you're going to decide that you're going to do something that you genuinely want to do. Just on a rant, like you're not going to do what you think is the most productive thing to do. You're not going to do what this person in this book tells you is the most fastest way to success or health or whatever it tells you to do. You're not going to do what your mom said that you should do. You're going to just genuinely say, what would be the funnest way I could think to spend this Friday night? And then you're going to do it. And so what you're doing as you do those things is you're really asking yourself, who am I? What do I love? What do I want? What do I need? And then the second part is you're having the courage to give yourself that, right? Despite all of your mind, whatever, like that's not the healthiest thing to do. That's not the most productive thing to do. That's not the most whatever thing to do. You're going to do it anyway, because you're just going to practice trusting yourself. I'm going to trust if my body says it wants a banana, that what it best needs is a banana. And I'm going to trust that if what my body says it wants is avocado toast, that what I most need is avocado toast. And rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat until you start, bigger and bigger things over time. And so it might sound really silly, those things, but it's actually really powerful. And it's what I did years and years ago until it gets to the point, at least for me, where I had so much faith and confidence and trust in my body that I was able to navigate, a pregnancy, one of the biggest experience of a woman's life, all with trust that my body was going to do this. My body was going to create a healthy baby, and it was going to birth a healthy baby. And that was just how it was going to be. I was just committed to that, and it's just how it was going to be. And it's how it is. I have the healthiest baby ever.
Right. I think you talked a little bit about this in your video, but were there ever moments where it was maybe not doubt, but definitely tougher to stick with your trust or with your intuition?
Totally. I mean, we're all human. And I think anyone who says that they don't ever have a moment of fear is lying. But there's a big difference between feeling a moment of fear and moving through it and living in fear. Mm-hmm. And so I very aggressively choose not to live inside of fear. I very intentionally choose to move out of that framework. I observe it. I notice that, this feels, I feel afraid. I feel like I'm in this space, and I choose to move out of it. But I absolutely did have moments of doubt, right? It was a new experience. I've never done this before. Is this really possible? But yeah, I think, I think that a lot of times we feel that our feelings or our thoughts are true in some objective sense, when in reality, they're not. We can choose new ones, right? Like I can feel fear and choose to move into courage. Mm-hmm. I can think I can't do this and choose to move into I can do this. And so those thoughts and those feelings are just things that come up, and I can choose to move into something more powerful.
Right. So that thought work aspect of things, is that something that you practice or that you incorporate in your daily life?
Yeah, it's hugely part of my daily life. And it's hugely part of the work that I do in helping people as a health coach, helping people understand and move towards greater health. It's really becoming so aware, becoming what I like to call a mental surgeon, right? We become so aware and so diligent in observing our thoughts, mm-hmm. and replacing the disempowering ones, the fearful ones, the negative, the destructive ones with truthful ones. And so a huge part of my pregnancy was meditation, mm-hmm. hypnobirthing, birth affirmations. I have birthing cards that I would read over and over again. I had a birthing card that I wrote myself about 7 or 8 months ago that I would read to myself every morning. That was a declaration of the type of birth that I was going to have. I was going to choose to have a labor and delivery that I knew I was capable of, that I knew that I could move through. I was going to trust. I mean, I had this whole card that I would just repeat to myself over and over and over again. And that felt like the most important work that I did in preparing for my baby, not just for the birth, but just for motherhood. Mm-hmm. I often felt like, and it's truly no judgment to any other woman for their choices, but we spend a lot of time picking out colors for nurseries and all the perfect furniture and maybe the perfect car seat or whatever these things. And those things, again, are fine and perhaps necessary for some, but for me, I didn't do any of those things. I didn't make a nursery. I didn't spend my time picking out the perfect baby clothes. I spent a lot of time deeply releasing these ideas that I had about what pregnancy, birth, and motherhood was going to mean for me, and replacing it with new stories, new beliefs that felt good for me. I mean, when we think about like the movies that we watch, the TV shows that we watch, pregnancy and birth it's horrible, right? Like it's women screaming and flailing, and it's the most traumatic thing ever. And so there's a lifetime for me of work around releasing that. I was not going to have that experience. That was not going to be true for me. I don't believe that that's ultimately true because I've read the book, I've talked to the people, I've listened to the stories of women who have had pregnancy, birth, and motherhood experiences that are ecstatic and beautiful and joyful. So there's a reality of that available, and I choose that. Right. And so, but in order to choose that, in order to get to the point where I was able to choose that in my own birth experience, it was a lot of coming back to that truth, a lot of releasing those old stories. And I spent time every single day working on that.
It sounds like you also were able to immerse yourself in stories of like people who did what you were looking to do.
Totally.
Yeah, so you kind of had people who led the way. You're able to immerse yourself into like this alternate reality almost that most people aren't aware of. Do you have any, I mean, we're very lucky to have you here because all of your life, pretty much, well, the parts that you're willing to share, which is a lot more than most people are all available on Instagram or on YouTube. So if people want to follow you, they can actually see your reaction to when you found out that you were pregnant. They can see, you know, your entire pregnancy play out before their very eyes, including the actual birth video being on YouTube. But, you know, if somebody wanted to immerse themselves in some of the reality or use some of the tools that you used during your pregnancy, where could they find those or connect with those?
Totally. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different books that I recommend. I mean, I can recommend them here if you'd like. I think Ina May is really good. She has 2 books, Spiritual Midwifery and Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. Those were 2 resources that I really enjoyed. And then, I mean, there's a bunch of different books. And then a third book that I really highly recommend is Portal, The Art of Choosing Orgasmic Pain-Free Birth, but it's just heading is Portal by Yolanda. That's a really, really, really good book that really got me into a good, empowered headspace. I'm hosting in my community a series of empowered pregnancy and birth workshops starting tomorrow, actually. And I'm going to do several of them, which, they're available to join live. I know this will come out after the first one comes out, but there'll also be replays up in my community as well. And I eventually intend to make a course about how I navigated pregnancy and birth in a way that felt really, really good, not traumatic at all for me, and resulted in, awesome health for me and my baby. So yeah, those are my recommendations.
Absolutely. So when it comes to looking forward and being a mom, do you find yourself reaching for resources on like how you're going to parent? Because I can only assume that with all of your intuitive connection, you have a specific approach to parenting already in mind.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be an intuitive process. I am reading this one book. Wes and I are reading this one book on parenting. I'm trying to remember the name of it right now. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's about a woman who went to several other countries and cultures and studied how they do parenthood there. And I feel very drawn to studying and understanding parenthood, not based off of US American standard, because I don't think we quite have it down best, how it could best be done. And I think some other places might be onto things that we might have forgotten. So I feel like parenthood is another narrative. There's other ideas around that I really feel to address and maybe change the narrative around, because there's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of expensive, a lot of a loss of freedom, a lot of just negativity. At least that's my impression before I got pregnant, that there was just like a lot of around being a parent. And I just, that's crap. And I don't want any part of that. I don't claim that. I don't choose that for myself. And it hasn't been that for me. I know it's only been 2 weeks since I've had my baby, but it's been the greatest joy I mean, just like the best thing. And I would never push anyone to have children who didn't genuinely want to, but I would say it's awesome. Like it's such an amazing, truly unspeakable experience that I just feel like it's such a shame that we have these negative ideas about what it means. And so I just plan to raise my son and whatever other children I eventually have, just doing life with us. We plan to homeschool slash unschool our kids and just explore who they are and what their interests are. They already came here with a plan. They already came here with a purpose. And so I think it's just a lot of not getting in their way, right? Like a lot of not creating obstacles for them, a lot of not, you can't, or we want you to be this type of person. It's a lot of, who are you? What do you love? What do you want to do? You love to build Legos. Okay, maybe you're going to be an architect someday, or you love to paint. Maybe you want to be an artist. And we're just going to explore who they are and what they love, and just do life with them. I just want to do life with my son. I want him to be with me all the time. And we've already meditated together. Like I just have him with me while I'm doing my things. And that feels like the most natural way, I guess, for me to parent is to just have him with me as I live my life and with his dad.
I hear you on that. It sounds like also something that you mentioned was you keep mentioning, I'm reading this book, I'm reading this book. It just reminds me, or kind of like is a stark comparison to how I get most of my information. Do you find yourself engaging in books a lot? I mean, are you ever watching videos on YouTube or watching videos on Instagram? It sounds like you have a lot of book time.
Yeah, I do make a lot of time for reading. I consider it part of my job to read. As a coach, as a thought leader, I think it's really important that I continue to expand myself and educate myself. And so I find books are one of the best ways to do that, because you can just go deeper, right? Like this hour-long podcast is awesome, but how much more if we read a book? So I do totally listen to podcasts, go on YouTube, engage on Instagram, but I choose mostly to be more of a creator in spaces and less of a consumer, and more of a consumer of books.
Interesting. I also saw recently that you posted that you spend a lot of time thinking, and you make a lot of time for that. And that ties into what you said earlier about moving slow and like living a little bit of a slower lifestyle. Can you kind of share, if you're open to it, like what a day looks like and how you build rest into the day and how that feels for you?
Totally, yeah. So I wake up in the morning and I always journal out things that I'm grateful for, 5 to 10 things that I'm grateful for that morning. And I also journal out what I'm claiming to be true for myself, whatever goals that I have, bringing them into the present. I am this person with this thing. I am this person who has this accomplishment, even though I haven't yet. And so those are my affirmations and my daily things that I do to get my head in a place of power and gratitude. And then, yeah, I sort of slowly make my way down to the kitchen where I make a smoothie for me and my husband. I feed the baby now. And I've been making it a practice while I'm feeding the baby to just be with him and to just think, not to try to be feeding him while also scrolling on my phone, but just like really just sitting and thinking. And yeah, and then I work, and I like to sit outside and just look at the trees. We live in Amish country, so I watch the horse and buggies go down the street in front of me, or the guy tilling the field out front. And then I always read in the afternoon and meditate, just sort of like, that's my like break, my siesta, I guess, if you will, is to lay down and read and meditate for a half hour or so. But yeah, I really feel that, part of health is, like I said, connection to self. And how can we be connected to ourselves if we don't ever have our own thoughts, right? Like we're just constantly thinking other people's thoughts. We're constantly taking in so much information. I mean, even speaking of books, right? Like there's even this aspect of like, which I've had to watch for myself. Am I just consuming, right? Like, am I just like reading this book and putting it down and going on to this book and putting it down and going, and then it's like, well, where's the integration? And so another thing that I do with my community is I host a book club reading some of the most influential books on health and mindset that I've read. And one of the things that we come back to a lot is the integration of these things. There's no point to watching the YouTube videos, reading the books, listening to the podcast, like taking in all this information if it's not integrated into who we are, what our thinking is, and then how we live our lives. And I think there's a lot of that happening where there's a lot of taking in good information and maybe some not so great information, but very little change, right? Like very little change that comes of it. And so I think, well, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point in all of that? And so I think part of really slowing down and listening to myself and having time to think, like having that be like, I have a specific thinking block in my day, because how am I supposed to know who I am, what I want, what I need, what my future is going to look like in a year from now, what my goals and dreams are for 5-10 years from now? Like, how am I going to know any of those things if I'm just taking in information and I'm not sitting with myself, really paying attention to who I am and what I want?
Right. That really resonated with where I am, particularly in this phase of life. Like, I consumed so many books and so many podcasts and so many YouTube videos and Instagram posts. And I finally was like, you know what? I am trying to fix myself, and I'm just always constantly in the state of fixing myself. And I finally had to be like, what am I trying to get into? Like, I'm trying to be fixed, basically. So I was just like you said, you are health. I was like, I'm just going to assume that I'm already fixed. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I'm the perfect manifestation or anything like that. It just means that I'm really truly, like, I'm exhausted of trying to self-develop and fix myself. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep trying, but it does mean that all the things that I've learned, it's time to start being connected and being those things, not just thinking them or doing them, but literally being them. And that's why I'm doing this podcast and why it's so important to me, not because I need to share what I've learned, but because I realize that when I'm satisfied and happy and connected, that this is what I want to talk about. This is what I want to do. I want to highlight people who are being a different way so that people everywhere can see that there are thousands of paths back to the self, and it doesn't have to be any one particular path that's been prescribed to you. And I really love the path that you've chosen, because it feels very balanced, and I can tell that you feel very happy and genuine, and you've accomplished so much within that path.
Thank you. Yeah. I think circling back to the self-development thing, I think that's sort of the trap of the self-development world, right? Is it's constant, you need more, you need this, you need that, because you're broken. And that's kind of an irony, because it's like we're trying to self-develop while constantly thinking that we're not. Mm-hmm. I can plug one more book. Now, really going to sound like a nerd. One of the best books I've read in the last couple years on this topic was "You're Not Broken" by Chris Duncan. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? Have you read it?
No, I haven't read it.
So good. It's that exact thing. It's this constant feeling like we're searching for a fix, when in reality there's nothing to fix. And that's exactly how I feel about our health. There's nothing to fix. Your health, I'm health, and it's our unwillingness to accept that keeps us searching, mm-hmm. and keeps us perpetuating symptoms, because we're so convinced that we're sick or we're broken. And I say, let's just release those things altogether. And like you said, we're not arrived, right? Like we're mm-hmm. never full arrived, but you are enough right here and right now. And you are health right here and right now, despite whatever symptoms, despite whatever imperfections in your personality. Like, it is enough. And if we can't accept that now, we won't be able to accept that when we've accomplished the next thing or the next thing, right? Because we'll always be chasing. There'll always be a new symptom. I can always find a rash, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Always find some proof that I'm not yet good enough. And so I think we needed to decide. We just need to decide that I am health, I am enough, I'm not broken. And that in and of itself is a huge paradigm shift that ushers in health and happiness just in that paradigm shift.
Truly, truly, truly. It's been a really big, it's been a relief. And I finally feel almost like what I was when I was a child. I realized that something I did when I was a child was I was very dramatic. I was destined to be an artist. I swear, I'm so dramatic. And I love to be immersed in a world of art. And I always felt embarrassed by it because it was called angst. But maybe I'm just angsty, you know, and I shouldn't be ashamed of that. But when I'm truly connected to myself, that's what I like to do. I like to create little worlds. I like to make art. I like to make music. I like to dance. I like to make music videos. I like to create cards or anything that's beautiful. And it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't need to be its own business. It doesn't need to make $1 million. It just needs to be truly satisfying in that moment. And I already feel loads better than I have the whole time I was trying to fix myself. And there's less ups and downs. Oh my gosh, the ups and downs. Would you say that's been a part of your experience as well? I mean, there's still ups and downs, but.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely always going to be ups and downs, but I think it's more, I just feel more in control, right? Like more masterful of it now because I'm not living within this framework that there's something wrong with me.
Very fair. All right. Well, we are approaching the end of the interview. And before we go, I know you've recommended quite a few books, and it sounds like You Are Not Broken is kind of like the one that has been a real paradigm shifter for you. Is there anything else that comes to mind as a resource that if someone is like looking to explore more, you're like, this is it?
Yeah, I had that one written down as one that I definitely wanted to plug. I should be an ambassador or something for him. No, yeah, You're Not Broken is a really, really good book. If you are interested in like an empowered pregnancy or birth, I really recommend Portal. Like I said earlier, by Yolanda Norris Clark. So those two books, and then I think another really great one, if I'll just can have a third, is Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life by Bob Proctor. That's a little nugget, but really powerful, really good one.
Oh, that's so fun. I'm definitely going to get that one right after this.
Cool.
Well, this concludes our interview. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. This is going to be a really awesome one, and I can't wait for people to see it.
Cool. Thanks for having me.